Welcome the anointed ones. Never forget, the devil doesn't attack what's weak. He sends committees for what's divine. And some of y'all, they sent an entire jealous coalition with matching masks, fake smiles, and group chats full of your name in it. Because here's the cold truth no one likes to admit. When you're the real deal, you don't just make noise, you disturb dimensions. And when your presence starts exposing people's insecurities, lies, and spiritual bankruptcy, best believe they'll come together like it's a town hall meeting from hell. But plot twist, they never ran across a person like you before. You weren't just hard to break, you were built from everything they tried to bury. Fact, psychology confirms that group jealousy is often rooted in the fear of irrelevance. Translation, your existence alone was their biggest nightmare, because they couldn't copy, control, or cancel you. They didn't just gossip, they didn't just hate. They tried to spiritually jump you, but now they're the ones falling apart in real time while pretending they're healing. Spoiler alert, you can't heal from karma you created. So in this video, we're pulling the curtain back on what really happened and why this jealous group is going down forever, thinking they could target someone heaven personally endorsed. Grab your popcorn and your spiritual seatbelt. This one's going to expose more than just the plot. It's going to reveal why you were always the prophecy in disguise. Let's begin. Number one, they targeted you because they mistook rarity for weakness. They targeted you because they confused your quiet strength for weakness. They looked at how you moved, how you didn't brag, how you didn't fight for the spotlight, and assumed you were easy to control. But what they missed, what they completely underestimated, is that you weren't shaped by approval. You were shaped by survival, real survival. The kind that doesn't leave scars on the outside but carves entire worlds of wisdom inside you. You were built in silence, in darkness, in lonely seasons where nobody clapped, nobody checked in, and yet you still rose. They had no clue you came from the fire, and not only did it not burn you, it built you. They came for you thinking they had found a soft target, but you weren't soft. You were rare, and rare things confuse average people. They don't know how to handle someone who doesn't play the game, someone who doesn't shrink, doesn't perform, doesn't ask for permission to shine. They only know how to respond with envy, control, or sabotage, and so they picked sabotage. But what they didn't realize is that you've been through worse, way worse. Their betrayal, just another page in a book you've already rewritten with your tears, your healing, and your growth. They thought you were the weak link, but you were the trapdoor. And every move they made against you, it exposed them. Every attempt to dim your light only made your purpose brighter. What they meant for destruction became your upgrade, and now they're watching you stand in a power they can't understand, not because you're loud, but because you're rooted. You're not fighting for validation. You're walking in confirmation. That's why they're crumbling. Not because you're arrogant, but because you're untouchable in ways they never could be. They didn't just underestimate you, they misread the entire assignment. Number two, this group wasn't jealous of what you had. They were terrified of what you're becoming. They weren't just jealous of what you had, they were terrified of what you were turning into. On the surface, it might have looked like envy over your confidence, your energy, your presence. But the truth runs deeper than that. What really rattled them was watching you evolve into something they couldn't label, couldn't manipulate, and couldn't keep small. You started growing past the version of you they were comfortable with, and that scared them. Not because you changed, but because your change made them feel exposed. It reminded them of everything they weren't doing, everything they gave up on, everything they pretend to be okay with settling for. You became a living reminder of their own stagnation. That's why the attacks got louder the more you healed. The more you found clarity, peace, purpose. The more they tried to confuse you, distract you, pull you back into the mess. It was never about what you physically owned. You could have had nothing in your hands and still intimidated them. Because what you carry can't be seen with the eyes. It's spiritual. It's the favor, the anointing, the resilience. You carry something ancient and disruptive, and they felt that before you ever opened your mouth. They knew you were changing into someone they couldn't sit next to and feel superior anymore. someone they couldn't control with guilt or shame. You stopped needing their approval. You stopped explaining yourself. You started shining without asking permission. That's when the fear kicked in, because deep down they knew once you got fully aligned, fully activated, it was over for their little ego games. You weren't just growing, you were becoming dangerous to anything fake, manipulative, or insecure. They saw it coming. That's why they came together. That's why they tried so hard to stop you, because they didn't just see who you were, they saw who you were becoming, and it scared the hell out of them. Number 3, you were the mirror that revealed their filth, so they tried to shatter it. You didn't have to say a word to make people uncomfortable. Your presence alone exposed everything they were hiding. You walked in the room, and they felt seen in a way they weren't ready for. Not because you were judging them, but because you didn't need to pretend like they did. You were real, and realness is offensive to people living behind masks. They've spent so long building an image, rehearsing who to be around different crowds, hiding their insecurity under filters and fake confidence. Then you came along and disrupted all that just by being yourself. You became the mirror, and nobody likes the kind of mirror that reflects the truth they've been avoiding. So instead of dealing with their own mess, they tried to break the mirror. They gossiped. They twisted your words. They painted you as the problem because that was easier than admitting you made them uncomfortable for all the right reasons. You didn't attack them. You didn't expose their secrets. But your energy, your clarity, your wholeness, your authenticity forced them to see what they were still hiding from. They started blaming you for emotions they weren't mature enough to handle. That's why they turned on you. You didn't harm them. You highlighted what was already broken inside them. Your peace triggered their chaos. Your growth triggered their stagnation. Your joy triggered their bitterness. But instead of sitting with that and growing, they took the easy road. They projected, they ganged up, they tried to twist the narrative, but deep down they knew the truth. You were never the problem, you were just the reminder that healing is possible, that truth is powerful, and that living free is a choice. And when people aren't ready to choose freedom, they'll always attack the one who already has it. That's what happened. You didn't just show up, you revealed everything fake that couldn't survive in your light. Number 4, they united over hating you because they could never stand alone in their own truth. They didn't come together because they loved each other. They came together because they all hated you. That was the real glue. That was the only thing holding them in place. A mutual obsession with trying to bring you down. They called it friendship, loyalty, even protecting their peace. But the truth is, none of them had the strength to face you alone. Not one. So they formed a little alliance, not out of confidence, but out of fear, because cowards always move in packs when they're targeting something they know they can't touch on their own. They couldn't stand in their own truth, so they latched onto each other's delusions. They needed each other's approval to justify the lies. They hyped up the gossip. They fed the drama. And the wildest part, half of them didn't even know why they didn't like you. They just went with the crowd because that's what weak-minded people do. They don't think for themselves. They don't look for truth. They just follow whoever's the loudest. But that kind of unity never lasts because hate is not a stable foundation. It's poison. And now it's rotting them from the inside. That little group falling apart one by one, because when the mission fails and your destruction didn't happen, all that's left is their own emptiness. The same wounds they tried to distract themselves from by attacking you are still there, only now they're deeper, and now they're turning on each other because the truth is surfacing and their lies are collapsing. What they never understood is that you never needed a group. You stood in your truth alone, and that's why you're still standing. That's why their little alliance couldn't break you, because you weren't built on gossip and fear. You were built on purpose and power. And no alliance formed in darkness will ever outlast a soul protected by light. Number 5, they thought you were an easy target, but you were a divine trap. They looked at you and thought, this one's soft, this one won't fight back. They thought you'd fold under pressure, crack under the weight of isolation, and stay quiet when falsely accused. They believed you were an easy target because you didn't come with a big ego, a loud mouth, or a need for revenge. But what they never realized is that you weren't just walking through life. You were walking through purpose, and that purpose had traps built in, not for you, but for them. Every lie they told, every setup they planned, every move they made in secret, it's all recorded. You didn't need to expose them. They exposed themselves. That's the trap. They thought they were destroying you when really they were documenting their own downfall. They thought they were catching you slipping, but they were walking right into divine evidence. The more they plotted, the deeper they buried themselves in karma. And all the while you just kept growing, kept rising, kept healing. That's what drove them crazy. Not just that you didn't fall, but that every attack ended up elevating you. You were never the target. You were the test, and they failed miserably. What they didn't know is that God had already factored in every betrayal, every hit, every loss. Nothing caught the divine off guard. Your pain had purpose, your silence had weight, your tears watered the roots of something far more powerful than their schemes could ever touch. Now the fallout has begun, and it's not just emotional, it's spiritual. Doors are closing for them, connections are crumbling. Their energy is collapsing under the weight of their own intentions. They thought they were clever, they thought they were slick, but they were never in control. They were playing a role in a prophecy they didn't even know existed. And now, the trap has sprung, and you're walking out with favor, clarity, and receipts, while they're left trying to escape a judgment they designed for you. Number 6, your spirit triggered their demons, and they mistook that for a personal offense. You never had to lift a finger for them to feel threatened. You never insulted them, never disrespected them, never came for them, and yet they acted like you were their personal enemy. Why? Because your energy, your presence, your spirit disrupted everything they were trying to hide. You didn't even know the war had started, but your existence alone was a trigger. Not because you were doing too much, but because you were doing what they couldn't, living in truth. The moment your spirit entered the space, it clashed with everything they buried, all their bitterness, insecurity, jealousy, and fear. It got loud around you. You didn't cause the damage, you just revealed it. You showed them what it looks like to heal, to evolve, to stop pretending. And for people who depend on masks, your authenticity was offensive. It poked holes in the identity they spent years fabricating, so they twisted it. They told themselves you were arrogant, fake, dangerous, even evil, all because you didn't carry the same pain they refused to address. That's why they stalked you online, kept tabs on your moves, mimicked your energy while secretly hoping for your downfall. It wasn't just jealousy, it was projection. They weren't mad at what you did. They were mad that your light reminded them they were still stuck in the dark. They couldn't sit with their own demons, so they cast you as the villain in a story they created to avoid accountability. And when multiple broken people feel exposed by the same person, they rally together like moths, hating the flame that reveals them. That's why the obsession started. That's why the gossip wouldn't stop. It had nothing to do with who you are as a person, and everything to do with who they aren't. You didn't hurt them. You were the reflection they tried to avoid. And when truth shows up wearing skin, it terrifies people still hiding behind a lie. Number 7, they played dirty because clean hands could never beat you. They knew from the very beginning they couldn't beat you honestly. You were too focused, too resilient, too grounded. So they never even tried to go the clean route. Instead, they reached for every underhanded tactic they could find. Whisper campaigns, false accusations, strategic silence, and backroom manipulation. It was all part of the playbook. Because the truth is, people who know they can't stand next to you in the light will always operate in the dark. They couldn't handle your strength, so they tried to poison your reputation. They couldn't break your spirit, so they targeted your name. They didn't have the skills, the depth, or the favor to match your lane, so they decided to throw mud, hoping it would slow you down. But what they didn't realize is that everything they threw at you only revealed how dirty they were, and now they're stuck. Because once you get your hands filthy like that, everything you touch starts to rot, even the things you once prayed for, their blessings backfiring, their connections turning cold, their plans falling through before they even get off the ground. That's not coincidence, that's consequence. Because the universe doesn't play about energy, and when your hands are covered in sabotage, manipulation, and envy, the same dirt you throw out eventually finds its way back to you. Meanwhile, you stayed clean, not perfect, but clean. You didn't stoop, you didn't beg, you didn't retaliate. You let the truth do what it does best. expose and elevate. And that's why you're untouchable now. Not because you screamed louder, but because you stood taller. You kept your dignity, and in a world where so many trade integrity for clout, that alone made you dangerous. They thought playing dirty gave them the edge, but all it did was prove they were never on your level to begin with. Number 8. You were the soul. Their rituals couldn't bind. There are levels to envy, and what you dealt with wasn't just gossip, shade, or petty hate. Some of them crossed over into spiritual territory, thinking they could touch what they didn't understand. They weren't just jealous of your energy, they wanted it. They wanted to tap into your frequency, imitate your glow, steal your essence. So they tried things, rituals, manifestations rooted in obsession, energy work masked as self-help. They convinced themselves they could bend the laws of the unseen to fit their desire to be you, or destroy you. But what they didn't know is that your spirit came shielded, not just by your own faith, but by generations of divine protection. Your ancestors, your guides, your spiritual backing, all of it saw them coming before they even lit the candle or whispered the incantation. You weren't just protected, you were untouchable. Because your soul isn't rented, it's rooted. You didn't gain your light by copying anyone, you earned it through pain, death of the ego, sacrifice and alignment. That's why they could mimic the outer look but never access the inner core. They thought you were just lucky. They didn't realize your protection was ancient and intelligent. It doesn't just block attacks. It feeds on them. It transmutes them. Every hit they sent, every spiritual arrow they launched only sharpened your discernment and expanded your reach. That's why they're confused now, why they're exhausted, why their life feels like it's falling apart in slow motion. Because when you play with fire, you don't understand. It always turns on you, especially when that fire is divine. And now, the silence they're sitting in, that's the sound of their own energy echoing back at them. The curses they threw out are ricocheting. The confusion they sent is unraveling their minds, because you were never just a person to toy with. You were a protected soul walking in alignment, and they learned the hard way. You don't touch chosen ones without paying a spiritual price. Number 9, they called you delusional because you saw beyond their matrix. They loved calling you delusional, like it was some kind of insult meant to cut deep. They laughed at your warnings, your gut feelings, your dreams, all the things that didn't fit their neat little narrative. They labeled your visions as fantasies, your insights as paranoia, and your intuition as overthinking. But here's the brutal truth. You weren't crazy. You were early, way ahead of the curve. You saw the strings behind the puppet show they were all too comfortable watching. You noticed the cracks before the building fell. You heard the whispers before the lies were shouted. While they were busy living inside the box, you were quietly stepping outside of it. That's why they couldn't handle you, because your perception exposed their blind spots. Your understanding made their ignorance obvious. And their ego couldn't take being outsmarted by someone they thought was just delusional. Now, as the very things you predicted unfold like clockwork, they're scrambling. Suddenly, your crazy ideas are the only things that make sense. The people who laughed the hardest are looking for you. Not to apologize, but to figure out how you got it right when they missed the signs. They're trying to catch up, but you're not waiting. You're moving in a prophetic rhythm that they can't match. You're walking a path paved by foresight, resilience, and clarity, while they're stuck playing catch-up with reality. This isn't just about being misunderstood. It's about having a vision so clear it threatens the comfort of those clinging to ignorance. They called you delusional because they couldn't handle the truth you were living. But now the joke's on them, because you were never out of touch. You were just ahead of time, and time is catching up to everyone else. Number 10. You weren't sent to fit in. You were sent to unmask a cult of normalized madness. You weren't born to blend in or to play by the rules they handed down. You were never meant to be another cog in the machine of what everyone calls normal. The world you stepped into was already warped, filled with unspoken rules, inherited lies, and invisible chains that kept people trapped in cycles of fear, ignorance, and conformity. You were the divine contradiction, the seed dropped into a garden that had long been poisoned by control and complacency. Your very existence challenged the accepted narrative. You didn't just stand out because of surface-level quirks. You shook the foundations of generational mind control. That jealous group, they were the gatekeepers of the madness everyone pretended was normal. They were the ones who enforced the silence, the cover-ups, the don't question this mentality. They clung to the illusion like their survival depended on it, and maybe it did. Because once you arrived and started peeling back the layers, the spells started to break. You unplugged their system, not with loud protests or angry accusations, but simply by living your truth, by refusing to conform, by speaking what others whispered only in secret. That kind of presence threatens people who have been programmed to accept brokenness as just how things are. And it terrifies them because your light reveals their shadows in ways they can no longer ignore. You didn't come to fit into their corrupted story. You came to expose it, to make visible what was hidden, to tear down the walls built on fear and falsehood. That's why they attacked you so fiercely, because you weren't just different. You were dangerous to the status quo. You became the unmasker of normalized madness, the breaker of cycles, the catalyst for a new way of seeing and being. And though their resistance is loud, your impact is irreversible. The garden may be corrupted, but you're the seed of something real, wild, and unstoppable. Number 11. They created a war, but you were born with weaponized peace. They launched a war against you, expecting a battle of fists, words, and schemes. They thought you'd respond with equal venom, that you'd scramble to get even, play their games, or sink to their level. But you didn't. You chose a different kind of fight altogether. You never retaliated with the same cruelty or resentment. You didn't plot comebacks or carry grudges. You refused to stoop into their chaos, and that decision alone became your greatest weapon. Because what they didn't understand is that not every battle is won with noise and fury. Some wars are won quietly, with an unshakable calm that throws the enemy off balance. You fight on a different frequency, one of weaponized peace. That peace isn't weakness, it's power disguised as stillness. It's the deep-rooted confidence of someone who knows that dragging others into the mud only pulls you down. So instead, you rose, clear, focused, and unbroken. Their attacks scattered like stones thrown at water, making ripples but never sinking you. Meanwhile, they began to unravel, caught in their own webs of negativity and deceit. The very energy they wasted trying to pull you down turned inward, eating away at their foundation. Their bitterness grew loud, their alliances fragile, and their plans collapsing. They're falling apart not because you fought harder, but because you fought smarter. With a peace so fierce it became unstoppable. Your justice wasn't about punishment or revenge. It was about thriving in spite of everything, growing through the cracks they tried to create. Your victory is that you kept your soul clean, your heart open, and your mind clear. While they lost themselves in darkness, you became a living proof that weaponized peace is the deadliest force of all. Number 12. Your existence was the test, and they all failed spectacularly. Your existence wasn't just a random blip in their lives. It was a test designed by something far bigger than any of them. Heaven didn't send you to make friends or to blend in as one of the crowd. You weren't their peer or their competitor. You were the exam they never expected to face. Every act of kindness you showed, every boundary you set, every moment you chose silence over reaction, all of it was being recorded, analyzed, and stored in a ledger far beyond their comprehension. This wasn't about winning popularity contests or earning approval. It was a divine experiment to see who could hold integrity under pressure, who would reveal their true character when faced with your light. Some tried to hide behind fake smiles and fake loyalty, but their masks slipped. Others lashed out, exposing the rot beneath their polished facades. Their reactions became the answers on this test. A test you didn't even have to grade yourself. Now the records are sealed, and the judgment phase is in full motion. It's clear who was genuine and who was only playing a role, who was willing to grow and who was stuck in self-deception, who was brave enough to walk beside you and who chose to tear you down. The failed ones are exposed, not just to you, but to the universe. Their true colors are no longer hidden in shadows or whispers. This trial wasn't for their benefit, it was for yours. To separate the wheat from the chaff, to clear the path for your rise. You were never here to fit in or to lower your light for them. You were sent to illuminate their shortcomings and to open doors only the worthy could walk through. And in that you passed, while they all failed spectacularly. Number 13, they thought destroying you would heal their emptiness, but it multiplied it. They believed that tearing you down would fill the hollow spaces inside them, that by destroying your reputation, your joy, your very essence, they'd patch their brokenness. But that's the cruel trick of feeding off others' pain. It's a feast with no nourishment. They swooped in like vultures, circling your name, consuming every rumor, every slander, as if swallowing you whole would make them whole. Yet no matter how much they gnawed, the emptiness only deepened. They couldn't digest your spirit because it was never meant to be their meal. You weren't something to be consumed or broken down. You were a warning label, a living sign that the hunger inside them could never be satisfied by devouring someone else's light. They chased after you, hoping to fill a void with your downfall, but all they got was spiritual starvation, an endless ache that no amount of negativity could ever heal. The irony is brutal. In trying to heal themselves through your pain, they only amplified their own wounds. Your strength wasn't a buffet. It was a mirror reflecting the depth of their own emptiness. And mirrors don't lie. No amount of gossip, lies, or sabotage could change the truth. They remain hollow, constantly chasing but never finding peace. Meanwhile, your spirit remains untouched and whole because it was never theirs to take. Their hunger turned into a curse they carry alone, while you continue to rise, fueled by an inner well no one can poison. They thought breaking you would fix them, but all it did was expose the real sickness, and it's theirs, not yours. Number 14. You didn't just survive their attacks, you transformed into evidence. You didn't just endure the barrage of attacks, the rumors, the backstabbing, you transformed. You became living proof that everything they assumed about you was dead wrong. Their attempts to break you didn't just fail, they became the fuel for your evolution. You are the undeniable contradiction to their stories, a walking refutation of their false narratives. Every step you take forward, every success, every moment of peace stands as a silent verdict against their hatred. Their lies tried to cage you, but your growth shattered the bars. Their gossip was meant to drown your truth, but your reality is louder than their noise. You didn't have to prove yourself by shouting or fighting back. The sheer fact of your existence disproves their entire agenda. You're a case study in divine protection. An example of what happens when someone is shielded by forces beyond human understanding. It's not just about survival, it's about thriving despite the odds, becoming a living exhibit that exposes how futile their attacks were. Now you don't need to explain or justify. Your presence speaks volumes. Your calm, your strength, your forward momentum, that is the judgment they can't escape. They put their bets on your downfall, but you flipped the script and became the ultimate evidence that their attempts were not just misguided, but powerless. They chased shadows while you stepped into your light, proving that divine alignment is a fortress no gossip or conspiracy can breach. You are the living record of truth, a silent testimony that echoes louder than any accusation. They set out to destroy you, but all they managed to create was a monument to their own failure and your unstoppable rise. The story they tried to write about you, filled with lies, jealousy, and sabotage, has completely unraveled. Every attack meant to break you only tightened the chains of their own downfall. They underestimated what it means to face someone protected by forces far beyond human understanding. You weren't just a target. You were the challenge they couldn't overcome, the enigma that shattered their fragile illusions. Their unity, built on fear and hatred, crumbled because it was never founded on truth or strength, only on the desperate need to control and destroy what they could never become. You emerged not as a victim, but as a living testament to resilience, power, and divine protection. Your silence has spoken volumes. Your growth has been undeniable, and your spirit has remained untouchable. They thought they were hunting prey, but they were stepping into a trap laid by destiny itself. Their attempts to dim your light only made it shine brighter, illuminating the cracks in their own souls and exposing their true weaknesses. Now, as they fall apart from within, your rise is unstoppable and irreversible. This is more than a personal victory. It's a cosmic correction. It's the universe realigning itself around a truth they tried so hard to bury. Your existence has rewritten the rules, challenged the status quo, and unmasked the hidden madness lurking beneath the surface of normal. You are the living proof that no amount of hatred, jealousy, or dark energy can overpower a soul anchored in purpose and divine destiny. So as they scramble to pick up the pieces of their own destruction, you continue forward with an unshakable confidence. You walk in your prophetic rhythm, armored by peace and elevated by truth. Your journey isn't just about surviving their war, it's about thriving in spite of it, about becoming the undeniable evidence that light always outlasts darkness. They never saw you coming, but now their downfall is your legacy, and your rise is the story the world needed to witness all along. If this message resonated with you and you're ready to stand strong in your truth, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a powerful reminder of your strength. Hit that like button if you feel the energy. Drop a comment below to share your story or thoughts. Your voice matters here. And don't forget to share this with someone who needs to hear it, because together we rise stronger. Let's keep this movement alive. God bless you.